So I was chatting to someone on email the other day, and we were talking about pentatonic lines, playing legato, and how I've used my finger picking techniques to do this. And it got me thinking about the very first pentatonic lines, very first sort of extended pentatonic lines that I discovered and I started playing myself, which were all based around triplets. All of that kind of stuff. And so I thought, I've covered this a little bit in the past, but I've never sort of joined everything together. So I thought what I'd do this week is actually talk about how I first started thinking about these kinds of lines, how I broke them down into sort of little fragments that you can then join together to create much more extended lines. So that's, if you like, the right hand technique. And then talk a little bit about the left hand technique, and then talk a little bit about the right hand technique. I use 3 or 4 different ways of picking a line like this, depending on my mood. And so I thought I'd then turn the camera around, point it to my right hand, and just show you me playing a few of these as well. So let's get started with the line itself. Okay, so I'm just going to work in the key of A minor. So here's my pentatonic on the 5th fret. You should at least know this shape to have a go at this set of lessons. But what we're going to do is we're going to take that original idea and break it down into a series of smaller fragments. And the first fragment is this one, which is a little 6-note pattern. I know a lot of people like to break this down into 3-note groups, but I find if you break it down into 6-note groups, you end up with a pattern that just moves in steps of 1 string across the neck. So if I have a look in a bit more detail, you can see I slur from that top C down to the A, and then I play the G note and the B string, and then the next part is the E, G, and I slur off onto that E. So it's a combination of plucking the strings and slurs. And the reason why I like to treat it as a group of 6 notes is that I can take that same pattern and then move it across to the next set of strings. Yeah, and I can join those 2 up and take it all the way across the neck, which is why I like to treat it as groups of 6 notes. Now, the next pattern I want to draw your attention to is this one, which starts on the B string on the 8th fret. So I play the note, slur off, hammer on, then I play the E 5th fret, and then the 8th fret on the B. And again, the reason why I like to work with this in groups of 6 notes is because then you've got a pattern that takes you across the strings and you can move it a set of strings at a time. So if I start on the lowest note, yeah, that takes me all the way across the neck. And of course you can join these 2 sets of 6 notes together. And of course you can start, once you've got that under your hands, you can start to take them for a walk across the neck. Just like that. And once you've got those kinds of working, you can start to add sort of little variations. One variation that I like for that ascending pattern is to start on the low note. So it's kind of a reversal of the first pattern. Okay, so ascending in a group of 3. So it's 2 groups of 3 joined together. And the reason why I like to drop that in is it gives a little repeated note as I turn it around. using that second. And the other thing I like to do is to just drop a little 3-note line in, like a little rotating pattern like that in there sometimes as well. Anyway, hopefully that gives you some ideas about how, starting with these little fragments, you end up with something that you can take on a walk all over the guitar neck, which is really great. Okay, so that's kind of how you construct this line. Those are the kinds of movements that you join together in order to create something much more extended. Let's have a look at the picking on this. Now, the first picking technique is very much applicable to if you use a pick as well, and then the others are much more fingerstyle. So let's zoom in to this hand and we'll see what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to move the shape up to the 12th fret so you can get both hands in the shot. So this is the first approach that I use to picking the shape. Again, I've got no pick. What I'm doing is I'm using my index finger nail as though that's the pick. Hopefully you can see that. So starting on a down strike. I have no problem with using pick techniques, even though I play fingerstyle. It's just another tool that I can use. So this is definitely something I'll use. Okay. So another technique that I use a lot is alternating index and middle finger. So let's have a look at what's going on there. So you can see I'm starting with my index finger, and so I'm pulling off and then I'm letting my index finger fall onto the B string, and then my middle finger follows up behind playing that top note, and that falls onto the B string as well. So I'm doing a technique called a rake here. You see that? So it's really quite an efficient technique. Yeah. Another approach I'll use is to alternate my thumb and a finger. It's much more sort of a much more traditional technique. Yeah, and it tends to be just my thumb and one of my fingers. And often, actually, it's my third finger. It tends not to be my index finger. What I tend to find, especially when I'm playing gigs, is my nails start to get a beating, and the one nail that gets the most of a beating is my index fingernail. So I tend to like to use my third finger much more than you might expect, because it gives my index and middle finger nails a bit of a break, if you see what I mean. Okay. And then a final technique that I use, it tends to be when I've got a lot of distortion. I find when you're playing with distortion, what you don't have are dynamics. You can't hit the string and make it louder or quieter, but what you can do is put more texture into it. And so if you hit the strings, things start to sound a bit more, you get much more pick noise if you're hitting the strings with your fingers. So that's a deliberate thing that I do to just introduce a little bit of a sloppiness. So it's just another way of sort of injecting a bit of texture into what I'm doing, and it's a great way of kind of, I don't know, building up intensity when you start hitting the guitar much more. So that's it. The choice of which technique I'm using really depends on my mood, and it depends on what I'm trying to express as well. Something like the strumming technique's much more frenzied, if you like, so if you want to put much more energy into your playing or your performance, then that's an approach that I'll use. Some of the others are much more precise, as you probably worked out as well. So it gives me a palette of ways of picking a little line like this, and that's something that I do a lot through my playing as well. So anyway, hopefully that was useful for you, and we'll chat next time. Goodbye.